Okay, welcome to the first go-to session of the month. This is the first of 4 go-to sessions that you have to attend either live or watch it after the fact. All these sessions are recorded for people who can't attend live, but you have to either attend live or watch it after the fact because there's a go-to quiz associated with each of the 4 sessions. So it's pretty much a requirement to either attend or watch. We have a lot to go over in this session, so I'm going to just charge right on forward. First of all, welcome to English Composition. I look forward to working with you all this month. I just had a great month with the 2 classes I taught last month, and I anticipate it's going to happen again. We have some fun activities, and I'm going to introduce you to what we're working on all month in this session. There's me, my name, okay? I know Full Sail is big on professionalism, and you should always call instructors by Mr. or Miss. I'm perfectly fine if you want to call me by my first name. I give you that permission. Just keep in mind that with other instructors, you should always wait until you have that permission before you start calling them by their first names. I just feel more comfortable being called on a first name basis. I know not everyone is comfortable doing that, but you have permission if you want to. The older I get, the harder it is to convince students to do that, but hey, that's just how it goes. I did teach for a year down south. Well, technically I'm back down south again because I'm here in Florida. But I taught at the University of Alabama, and this was back when I was in my mid-20s. And even back then, when I was young, I could not get those students to call me by my first name because, you know, Southern students, they're all so formal and polite. But that was okay because they had these cute little accents, so I pretty much forgave them. So call me what you will. Well, don't call me what you will. Call me Mr. Sussman or David. Either one is fine. Okay, so here's what we have to go over for today. Some basics about the course, and then we'll get into what you need to do this week. And then I want to introduce what we're working on all month, which is you're all going to be focusing on creating a public service announcement. So we're going to talk about what that is and how the public service announcement for this class is a bit more defined than the typical PSAs, as they're called for short, that you'll see on television, for instance. And then I want to talk a little bit about issues of audience, and we'll also get into stuff that I should have added to this bulleted list but didn't, like how to write an introduction, how to write a thesis statement, because one of your assignments this week, you'll have to start doing this pretty much immediately. And then topics. We're going to get into what public service announcements are and what makes a good topic for this month and what does not. And then if we need to leave things open for Q&A, we will at the end. Mario's confirming my comments about the South. It really was sweet. I'm not trying to make fun of them. They really did have these cute little accents, and they could not get away from calling me Mr. Sussman, even though I was like 25 years old at the time. Okay, so let's move ahead. First of all, how many people here in the session have already registered for the textbook site, which is called McGraw-Hill Connect? This is where you're going to find your online textbook and also some activities that you have to complete for the month. Okay, good sign. Lots of people have signed up, excuse me. For people who haven't, it's really as simple as finding this document, which is attached to 2 activities. I put it in 2 places just so you don't get confused. It's got all the registration information, and all you have to do is click on the link that's contained here in this box. And if you click on it, it will take you right to the Full Sail Connect site and walk you through the rest of the steps. You will need a code that should have been sent to your email address. If you didn't receive that code, you need to contact FSO support. There's also a McGraw-Hill customer support number at the bottom of the page. You can call that as well. And they can get this fixed real fast. So I don't want to hear people in week 2, week 3 saying, oh, I never got signed up for the textbook site. It really is simple, and most people have their codes, but there's always a few students who, for whatever reason, didn't get the code or accidentally deleted it. You can get that code back real quickly, but you need to move on it by making a phone call to either FSO support or McGraw-Hill customer support. Okay, let me close this because the fewer things I have running, the less it hogs my system. Okay, let me show the McGraw-Hill thing real quick. Once you're in, you'll see something like this. There are sort of 2 major parts here. I mean, your textbook is to the right here. It's kind of blocked by my go-to training control panel, but the textbook is here. But you don't really ever have to click on this because we've already chosen the readings for you, and they're organized, as you can see, by week 1, week 2, so on. So your readings are all contained here. And I'm not going to click on it just because it takes sometimes a few seconds to load. But if anybody started the readings, they're really short. Like most of them are like a single paragraph or two short paragraphs. So there's really not much excuse to not do the readings because they're not like long chapters upon chapters that you have to read. It's pretty quick work. So stay on top of that. But the big thing, the thing you're kind of be graded on, are these interactive modules. There are 4 of them, one for week 1, week 2, and week 3, and then there's one that lasts all month long because it's the longest of the bunch. So you're expected to keep up with this all month long. Yeah, Mario said it took him 30 minutes to read it all. So they're not long readings. Oh, that reminds me of something else too, because this gets brought up a lot. Some of the readings have questions at the end, or they kind of have thought questions or mini activities. You don't have to do those. You just have to read the material. So you never have to complete the little questions or thought boxes or mini activities that are included in the readings. The only things you have to complete are these things here, the Learn, Smart, Achieve, or I'll call it LSA from here on out, modules. It depends on how quick you are with the material, but I've heard for students it could take anywhere between 1 and 3 hours to complete each of these weekly modules. But stay on top of it, because I don't know how to say this, but there are a lot of gimme points in this class. Like these LSA modules add up to something like, I forget what they add up to, I think maybe 15% of your overall grade. You just have to complete them, okay? They're not graded on correctness. The module itself sort of gauges how well you're doing. So if you're answering questions correctly, you tend to move through the modules more quickly than if you're having trouble in answering incorrectly. But as long as you complete them to 100% and get to that finish line, you get all the points for those modules. Ariel says, can we forge ahead with these modules? Yeah, absolutely. I don't think, even though there are specific dates set up, as you can see, I've set up all of them to last the entire month, which means if you want to storm ahead and do week 2 ahead of time or week 3 ahead of time, you can do that. So you certainly don't have to wait until every LSA module is basically due on a Saturday. So week 1's modules due this Saturday, week 2 the following Saturday. You certainly don't have to wait for those due dates to arrive to work on them. So yeah, you can get a head start on them if you want. But don't ignore them, okay? Because these are free points. And by the way, I'm not trying to shill. I'm not trying to like plug McGraw-Hill. There are some things that McGraw-Hill is awesome at. There are some things that I think could be improved. But the feedback on the LSA modules from students has actually been pretty positive. There are a couple students every month who find it frustrating or annoying, or they don't like it, or they think they already know the material, and that will happen. But mostly it's been pretty positive. But it's free points, so just do it, okay? And these go-to sessions, when you take quizzes associated with these sessions, they're pretty much free points too. If you watch the sessions with some care, you should do just fine. There's another 10% for professionalism. So if you complete your work on time, you don't write any, I don't know, insulting emails to me or something, you should get 10% of that full professionalism grade. So there are a lot of gimme points just handed to you. There's a professional emails quiz that you have to take this week, which is pretty darn easy. So take those free points, okay? Because if you do, you set yourself up in such a great position to pass. And I really don't want to see people not pass this course this month. Okay. John says something about something being confusing at first. I'm not sure what that is. Maybe the McGraw-Hill stuff, the setup. Yeah, basically if you just click on these, on any of these modules, it will walk you through what you need to do. It will set up a schedule for you. You don't have to follow that schedule. You can do it all in one sitting if you want, but it will sort of walk you through things. So if it's difficult to navigate around at first, you'll catch on. It's pretty easy. Okay, so let me get away from this and go back to my PowerPoint thingy. Okay, so keep up with your McGraw-Hill stuff. Okay, let's start talking about this week's assignments. And actually, I should get rid of this slide because I'm also going to drift into just what we're doing this month. And so I'm going to begin with the biggest thing, which is what we're working on all month. Although you're going to start, you're going to have to complete an assignment that's technically it doesn't end until Monday, so I guess it's bleeding into next week. But you kind of have to start on it this week. Anyway, it's related to public service announcements, which is what we're working on in this class. Now, when I say public service announcement, who can give me an idea what that means, either by giving an example or trying to explain it? You can type in the chat box, or if you're brave, you can raise your hand using the little hand icon, and then I can unmute you and you can speak out loud. But when I say PSA, or public service announcement, what does that make you think of? Okay, DARE. I always forget what DARE stands for. It's something with drugs, right? I forget what that means. Some sort of current event statement. Okay. Mario says a government announcing something important. Similar, but that's actually a little bit different. I think there's a difference between like news items and news releases, even if they're purely factional and public service announcements. Harold says important info. Sarah says a message for the public to teach them. Yeah, I think that's key, right? It's a message that's delivered to the public to inform them and teach them about something important. I'm trying to think of a couple other people said some things. I think that was the gist of it. Christopher says addressing a problem. Okay, that's key. Okay, so it sounds like a lot of people kind of have a general idea what a public service announcement is. I always give the example of, have you ever watched television late at night and that really sad commercial from Sarah McLachlan comes on with the dogs, and it's like really depressing, and it lasts forever because you sometimes try to get away from the channel and watch something else, and then you go back to the channel and the abused dogs are still there. I don't know if people still know who Sarah McLachlan is. She was kind of a big name in the 90s, but now she's almost famous for that commercial, that public service announcement, more than anything. Yeah, quit smoking ads, that's another good example. So yeah, when we think about those kinds of things, right? Issues on domestic violence, issues on supporting animal shelters, issues on, DARE, like drugs, or anti-smoking, or Smokey the Bear, right? Help stop forest fires. Those are all examples of public service announcements. The difference is, for this class, your public service announcement is doing the same thing, but it has to be industry related. Okay, so you're not going to do anti-smoking campaigns or DARE type ads or things like that. Okay, you're going to pick something related to your industry. Which leads me to another question, which is, how many of you have kind of worked in your industry already? We have usually a mixture. So a lot of people are brand new. They're learning about these things for the first time here at Full Sail. Other people have. Okay, so Ariel, what have you done? What's your field and what have you done already? Sarah says she's done some. Other people brand new. Okay, that's fine. Felipe says he's been making beats for a few years. Esther has worked in motion graphics. Ariel has worked in feature film. Okay, good. So some of you have some experience already, and I'll ask you to draw upon that. Some of you don't, but that's fine as well. But here's my message to all of you, which is, whether you know your industry fairly well or you're brand new to it, the time to start learning more about your industry is now. Okay? If you have no idea what contemporary issues are in your industry, or debatable issues, or controversial issues, or issues that need to be addressed, you need to start researching like immediately. You can reach out to people you know, if you happen to know people who work in that field. They don't have to be big names. It might be someone who works in your town, I don't know, operating the soundboard for something. Or it could be a Full Sail instructor that you reach out to. And yes, it could be as simple as going online and Googling what are the sort of hot topics, the issues, the controversies, the debates that need to be addressed in your field. So whether you're in film or music production or recording arts or computer animation or mobile app design or show production or any of the other several areas of study that are here at Full Sail, you'll have to kind of do some research, if you don't know already, into your industry to find a topic that's worth speaking out about. Okay? Because the PSAs for this class, yeah, they have to be industry related. They have to be narrow in scope. We're going to talk more about that in a second. They have to have a clear persuasive angle. So we're not just giving factoids or information, although part of the PSA absolutely might deliver important information. And along with the persuasive angle, yeah, you're calling for action or support. Like, you're asking your audience to do something. I mean, those Sarah McLachlan commercials, they're asking an audience to do something. Smokey the Bear is asking an audience to do something. Okay, so you'll do that as well. So if you keep that in mind, I think you'll have an easy time with the PSA. But those are kind of the core concepts you need to keep in mind. Here's just an overview of how things look for the month. Week 1, you're going to choose a topic. And actually, I should fix this slide. Let me see if I can do it on the fly. We used to have a different schedule. Write an introduction paragraph and come up with a thesis. Okay, there's actually more to do this week. It used to be that week 1 was a little bit lighter. Okay, so you'll come up with a topic. You're going to actually write an introduction paragraph that could function as the beginning of your exploratory essay, which you're going to write during week 2, and you're going to come up with a thesis. Week 2, you're going to write that essay. So originally, it's just going to take an essay form. You're going to explore the topic somewhat thoroughly, and in 2 to 4 pages, essentially deliver your sort of, you could almost call it a pitch or an exploration of your topic. Week 3, you're going to participate in peer review, where you'll look at each other's essays and give feedback. In week 4, you basically have all the week pretty much just to work on your actual PSA. Because in week 4, things changed pretty completely. We stopped the sort of traditional writing component, and because Full Sail is a very different kind of university, so many of you have skills in music and film and video editing and animation, and you know how to use different tools and your creative types. You'll actually take your topic and your PSA call for action and literally turn it into a PSA, which can take the form of a short video, a short song, a short comic, a podcast, which is, an audio type piece. I'm not going to get into that too much now because it's not something we have to worry about until week 3-ish, but I do want to give you that glimpse now that that's what we're working toward. But now I do want to back up just a little bit and talk about audience, because audience is pretty important for this assignment, which is why I have the Batman thing here, Holy Audience Batman. Because we're writing to real people, okay? We're trying to reach out to an audience that would be receptive to what we want to inform them about. And so this leads me to what's called the rhetorical triangle. Oops. The rhetorical triangle is kind of it's a little bit difficult to explain. It's used more in rhetoric classes and English classes, and that stuff doesn't interest me as much because I'm not trying to convert you into little English majors. But I do want you to get the gist that this triangle represents 3 positions. There's the writer, there's the reader, and there's the text. And because there is a reader, an audience involved, each of these 3 positions will change based on whether you make changes to the other 2. So, for example, it makes a big difference if you're a game design student, whether you're trying to reach people who are already working in the industry, people you can assume already have the technical know-how to understand what you're saying, and maybe the focus of your PSA will be more tech-oriented. That would be a different audience than, say, regular gamers who may not know much about the tech point, but maybe you would try to reach that audience in different ways. So, because that audience would change, it would cause you, the writer, to make different decisions. And it would also, obviously, affect the text itself. The text would literally have different language, different techniques to try to reach that audience, etc. So you change any aspect of these 3 angles here, and it affects the other 2. That's the important thing I want you to come away with. That there's this interaction between writer, reader, or audience, and text. Which I think leads to my first quiz question. I think. Yep. So question number 1. Let me move this out of the way because it's blocking. What is a rhetorical situation? Okay, so we just went over that. Basically, I'm looking for you to sort of, in a couple sentences, explain what I just discussed in terms of the rhetorical triangle and the interaction between these 3 elements. Okay, so there's quiz question number 1. Easy question, especially since I just went over it. So either jot it down or take a screenshot. If you don't, that's fine. It's going to be recorded, so you can always just skip ahead in the video to the moments when the question appears. But the first question is just to give me the gist of what I just went over with the rhetorical situation or the rhetorical triangle. Okay, and we're moving. We're moving. In order to reach a very specific audience, we have to think about their needs. Different audiences have different needs. That's what I just used in my example, that it makes a big difference if you're speaking to, let's say, programmers who are actually writing the code for games and just regular gamers. But even in a broader sense, we have these fancy terms that we use to describe the different ways we can appeal to an audience. So I'd like to quickly go over those. First, by the way, these all have fancy Greek names. I don't care. Well, actually, I do care because you'll have to know it for one of the quiz questions. But when the course is over, I don't really care if you remember the fancy Greek words. I just want you to understand what the three major appeals are. The first one is called Pathos, which is the appeal to emotion, right? Because emotion could be incredibly powerful. The Sarah McLachlan commercials are using pathos big time. It's just an endless assault of images of sad pets, sad dogs trapped in their cages. The design there is to just absolutely pull at your heartstrings, and there's nothing wrong with that. Emotion is one of the most powerful appeals that we have. It doesn't always need to be that super emotional. We can make small emotional appeals here and there, but emotion is a big one. By the way, who wants to show off? What are the other two famous appeals? You know they have fancy Greek names. Some of you may have already done the reading, so you might know what the other two are. Okay, good. People are already answering. Some of you might remember it from high school. Yeah, logos and ethos, because the exact opposite of the appeal to motion is, of course, the appeal to logic, which is called logos. Symbolized here with my chessboard image. Right? I mean, logos is equally powerful. Emotion is great because it can pull on people's heartstrings, but don't forget the power of the brain, right? I mean, people can be moved by, like, for example, powerful facts, powerful statistics, things like that. It's really, really solid logic. If you can put together an essay or later a PSA that's built upon strong logical connections, that also has tremendous appeal. And finally, as some people mentioned, the last one is ethos, which is the appeal to trust or authority. I have a picture of a police officer, but I don't really mean so much authority in that sense. It's more the trust that you build as a writer. Sometimes the writer, him or herself, establishes that trust just because of their background. If not, ethos could also mean appealing to those who do have credibility or trust. So, for example, and I'll answer Ariel's question in just a second, but for example, if someone's doing a PSA on forest fires, who would be a more trustworthy representative to quote from, for example? Someone who's worked as a ranger for 15 years or Kim Kardashian? Obviously, one has more of an appeal to authority or trust than the other. I forget who said it. Ariel is right, though. It also gets into sort of moral issues. That you establish yourself as a credible author, that you make choices on the page that seem sound. So it's really that appeal to authority and trust. So, quiz question number 2. How are the three means of persuasion intended to appeal to a specific audience? I should reword that question, because really what I'm just asking for you is, what are those three appeals and what do they mean? Okay? So what are those three basic appeals we just went over? List them, explain them briefly. If you want to give an example, that would be great too. But just show me that you sort of remember that there are these three basic appeals. Your PSAs should probably try to be doing a little bit of all of it, maybe not in equal measure. Some people's PSAs will just naturally drift more towards ethos and logos maybe than pathos. Other people have topics that are more pathos oriented than anything else, but you should be trying to find ways in which all three play maybe some sort of role. So there's quiz question number 2. Okay, moving ahead. By the way, I should slow down. I feel like I'm trying to rush through things because we have so much information to go over, so I'll try to slow down a little bit. A student just sent me a private message. Yes, these sessions are always recorded for later viewing, so don't worry if you have to miss out on this, or someone's having tech issues and is worried that they won't be able to watch the rest of the session. You will, because it will be recorded. Okay, so like I said, start brainstorming your PSA topics now, and that means like right now, because one of your quiz questions will, well, I'll hold off on that. But yeah, you need to find your topics now. If you don't find the greatest topic in the world right off the bat, that's okay. I'm here to help you. As a matter of fact, a lot of you will probably need some direction, some pushing, some guidance to get you headed in the right direction. That's fine. That's what we need to do this week. That's what this session is designed for, in part, to get you off on the right foot, and I'll be helping you every step of the way. But start thinking about topics right now. Okay, so these are forbidden topics. Forbidden might be a strong term, but they're topics I really try to get people to stay away from. And I'll ask the group a question. Why do you think that I'm not crazy about these topics? Like I get a recording arts student, or even a film student who says piracy is bad. Piracy needs to be stopped. Or censorship is bad. Okay, John says they're obvious. Yeah, I'm just waiting to see if anybody else pops in with an answer. Film students love this last one too. Like, Hollywood is unoriginal. Nothing's being done in Hollywood. Everything's the same. We need a PSA that says Hollywood is boring and dull. Sarah says it would be useless to use. I'm not sure what that means. Too close to personal opinion to write about. Okay, yeah, all of you are right on. I forget who said it first, but and I have to scroll up to remember what he said. Yeah, the fact that it's too obvious, too broad, too bordering on personal opinion, all of those are the issue here. I don't mean to be mean, but like, piracy is bad. I mean, not only is it broad and kind of obvious, but it also feels, can I just say, a little bit lazy. It's like if you're a recording arts student or a music production student, the fact that you immediately jump to piracy makes me think that you spent all of 5 to 10 seconds thinking about issues in your industry. Censorship is bad is sort of so broad and obvious that we kind of know about that already. Yeah, Harold, I do have some example topics, and I'll show one of those in just a second. Same thing with Hollywood is unoriginal, and I like whoever said that they're bordering a little bit too close on personal opinion. It's not that your opinion isn't important. Obviously, if you have some sort of important message to deliver, you're probably interested in it or passionate about it. But we always begin with a concrete issue, an issue that we can all pretty much agree on exists and needs to be addressed. And then, sure, your opinion can come out in subtle ways. But we don't begin with a personal opinion and deliver a PSA on that, because then that's just your opinion that you're broadcasting to the world. Other examples I get are, there's no good music today, or music isn't as good as it was 25 years ago. Okay, by the way, I disagree. I think there's always great music, you just have to find it. But that's an opinion, okay? And you're perfectly entitled to that opinion. It's just, it's not really worthy of a public service announcement. A public service announcement is not about you getting your opinion, your personal opinion, out there so that other people can agree with you. We have to begin with a concrete issue first. I will give some examples of topics at work, but I want to continue with topics that are sort of problematic. By the way, this group, you're doing a great job. Sometimes people have trouble seeing what the issue is. The reminder the topics must be narrow and persuasive. So what's wrong with some of these topics? So graphic design, which is a field of study here at Full Sail. Graphic design is important, and it's all around us. Or films are making such great technological advances. Or music artists should be their own individuals. Or show production is an important part of the entertainment industry. Like, what's the issue here? Why would I be encouraging students at this stage to find something better? Harold says they're too simple. Okay, that's definitely part of it. Matthew says they're general. Right. Too broad. Again, they represent opinion rather than information. Yeah, some of them do. Definitely like this one about music artists should be their own individuals. It's broad, and it's also kind of purely opinion-based. The other ones, I don't know if you can see it. They're not really opinions. They're kind of the opposite, if that makes sense. Like, they're purely statements that no one would ever disagree with, that no one would need to be informed about. Right, Mario says they're not arguable. And it's not so much that we're creating arguments here, but we are delivering important information on an issue. Graphic design, the fact that graphic design is all around us, I think we agree with that. We know that, right? We don't really need like an announcement informing us about this. Mario is right though. Because there is a call to action. You want your audience to actually do something. These don't really open up to that. Same thing with films are making such great technological advances. I agree. Absolutely, I agree. But again, that's not really like an issue that needs public attention. That's just a fact. Yeah, Mario. It's an issue that should have kind of sides to it. It should be an issue that you're not just educating the public about, but encouraging them to take action, to do something about this important issue. So most of these are not doing that. Esther says, I don't get the connection to PSA. Why are these service announcements? I don't know if you're saying that you don't understand why these aren't great topics, or if you're sort of supporting what I'm saying, that these don't look like PSA topics. If it's the second point, I agree. So yeah, topics that are just purely informational don't work, and topics that are sort of too broad or too opinion-based don't really work well either. You need to find your sort of core issue that actually exists out there in the world. So every time I move the recording panel. Okay, so here's quiz question number 3, which isn't really so much of a question. It's just tell me what you think your topic could be for your essay and for your eventual PSA at the end of the month. Okay, so I want you to propose a topic in your actual quiz answer. By the way, when you go to the FSO platform, you're just going to see empty answer boxes when you take the quiz. You just need to fill those boxes with the answers to these questions. And I will say that give me some sense of what your topic means. Don't just say, I don't know, let me pick something. Music production. 360 deals. Don't just say 360 deals and leave it at that. Tell me a little bit about what you're thinking, like what the topic is, what you think you would like to do with it. If you know what your stance is, I would like to hear about a little bit about that. But yeah, tell me what your topic is. Mario says, well, can we run your topic ideas by you to see if they qualify? Yeah, absolutely. Anytime you can send me a message to the FSO platform or send me an email. I'm pretty kind on the quizzes. I don't really take off points if your topic isn't great. The only time I take off points is when clearly the topic is sort of doing the exact same thing that I already said not to do in the quiz. So when I get people who say, oh, I'm going to deal with piracy, and that just means to me that you didn't watch the session with great care. So I might take off some points for that. But at this point, I think it's kind of unfair to penalize people if their topics still need refining or improving. I just want to make sure that you're sort of moving on the issue. So don't freak out too much today. Mario, that's an awesome topic about dinosaurs. Sadly, it doesn't work for this class, but it's certainly a fun topic. Okay, so someone asked for like an example of what makes a good topic. I'm going to show that in a couple seconds by way of explaining sort of one of the big assignments you're going to need to do this week, which is there's a discussion board activity where, oh gosh, let me bring up the assignment sheet. No, I don't want to end the training. I have to go in and fix this. It's actually due by Monday of week 2. It still reflects the older dates, so don't always trust the dates on FSO, not the dates on the assignment sheets, because when I move dates around to give you, for example, a bit more time to work on something, yeah, sometimes I forget to change it in the assignment sheet itself, so I'll try to remember to fix that as soon as possible. But it's due on Monday of next week. And it gives you the gist. You can see that's worth 10% of your grade. But the gist is that you're going to draft an opening paragraph, basically the introduction of what could be your essay. In addition, you have 3 other prompts to answer, like what are the 2 main reasons you chose your topic, what can your audience do about the issue, and what questions do you have for your classmates. Discussions always require you to make this original post and then also respond to at least 2 of your classmates. This should be sort of typical because I think you've been in other classes where the rules are pretty much the same. I also teach DGL, and that's pretty much the standard, that you make an original post and you respond to 2 other people, their efforts, somewhat in depth, right? We're not just writing a single sentence to another classmate saying, oh, great job, or everything looks awesome, or thumbs up. Like, we'll actually take the time to read through what they've posted and give them feedback or direction or commentary. So really, you're just going to draft your introduction, and I'm going to get to the basics of what you need to do in an introduction in just a moment, and then you're going to answer a few other questions. And I'm going to show an example. I've already posted an example to the discussion board, so you can kind of use it as a model. But before I show that example, I do want to talk about introductions and thesis statements and all that fun stuff. I told you we have a lot to go over in this session. And by the way, it seems a little bit packed the first 2 weeks, and that's kind of by design. We do get moving quickly, not only because the course lasts a single month, but believe me, it will feel great come week 3 and week 4. So week 1, yeah, you need to start moving on finding a topic, writing an introduction, all that. Week 2, by the end of week 2, you'll already have to be handing in your essay. But then week 3 and week 4 get a little bit lighter. Especially week 4. Like, you're given pretty much week 4 almost entirely to you. There are tiny things you need to do, like take a final go-to quiz, but mostly the week is all yours to work on your actual public service announcement. So yeah, the heavy stuff is kind of front-loaded, that the first 2 weeks will seem a little bit busy, but then I think it starts to calm down for the final 2 weeks. Okay, so for this discussion board assignment, you'll need to choose a topic, find your thesis, and then draft an introduction paragraph. So let's talk about some of these elements for those who don't know about them. First, okay, so yeah, we're talking about issues of essay fundamentals. First, thesis statements. Most of you probably got this in high school, right? A lot of you. Is there anybody who doesn't know what a thesis is? I mean, I'm going to explain it anyway, but just out of curiosity. Okay, Esther got plenty of it. Most people do in high school. You get so much thesis information that you're sort of sick of hearing that term. Okay, maybe Esther is the only one who learned about thesis statements. Okay, Mario has too. Like, here's the textbook example. A thesis basically acts like a roadmap to your paper. It usually appears at the end of the introduction. Okay, so after your introduction ends, it ends with a thesis, which gives readers a sense where your paper is going. In essence, it's a sentence or two that defines your paper and tells readers where your paper is heading. Now, the great thing for this class is that these thesis statements are not like thesis statements you write in high school. You don't have to come up with some great argumentative thesis. You don't have to come up with something original and unique. For this class, your thesis is actually pretty simple. It's going to capture your PSA topic, hopefully your specific audience, and what you want your audience to do. So here's my example. I'm pretending that I'm a game design student at Full Sail. Because my background is English, I'm not going to use an example of something related to my industry, which is education. So I'll just pretend I'm a Full Sail student. So here's an example of a thesis statement that a game design student might write. Though video game companies have made strides in presenting strong, non-sexualized images of women, these companies need to be pressured to do more. Gamers need to write to game publishers and game magazines and let their voices be heard. Okay? So it's 2 sentences, but that's my thesis. We know what the topic is. It has to do with images of women in video games. Believe it or not, an audience is actually invoked here. It's gamers themselves, the people who play the games, not the people who create the games. That would be interesting too, but that would be a different paper. That would be a different PSA. I've chosen to address gamers. And here's what I'm calling on them to do. To write to game publishers and magazines and let their voices be heard. Now, here's a good example, right? You don't necessarily have to come up with some grand solution. If you have a pretty good, reasonable solution, that's terrific. But we just want the audience to do something, okay? So I haven't solved the grand issue of women, female representation of video games, but I have asked the audience to do something. Okay, so there's my thesis. So your thesis is going to do something pretty similar. Okay, in a sentence or two, it's going to capture what your topic is, and it's going to let me or any reader know what you're calling on a specific audience to do. Okay, so the thesis is the final part of your introduction. So how do we write introductions? First, there are some tricks to writing introductions. Ideally, we would like to grab the reader's attention, or at least find an original way to begin the paper. Again, this is a topic you get a lot in high school. Do people remember some of those tricks, those techniques, those hooks, I like to call them, to begin an essay? Instead of just beginning with a something really flat, like a factual statement or something. Okay, Esther says begin with a question. Yeah, there's a good example. Anybody else remember any other tricks or hooks or techniques? Esther asks a really good question. Is it okay to write in first person? Yes, for this class I'm okay with that, with one caveat, with one rule. If you're writing in first person, I expect that your personal experiences are somehow important or coming into play. In other words, lots of times students will create filler. They'll say things like I think, or I believe, or I feel, and all that stuff can be gotten rid of. Not because it's just in first person and insults me, but because there's no reason for it. Those things can be stated. If you say that, I don't know, I believe we all need to do something about forest fires, you can easily say that same sentence without using I believe. However, if you're talking about yourself, your experiences, you're drawing on something from your life, then absolutely, first person is fine. Okay, I didn't get many responses on other techniques or hooks, so I'll just jump into the fray. Okay, so introductions, here's the function of introductions. They briefly define the issue at hand, okay? More development takes place in the body of the paper, so you don't want to go overboard in the introduction. You want to save some of your good stuff for the body of the paper. But yeah, introductions are the place to briefly define the issue so that we understand what's being written about. As I already mentioned, introductions end with a clear thesis, and that they ideally should find a way to grab the reader's attention. So how do we do that? Well, here are a number of hooks or tricks or techniques that some of you probably learned in high school, and if you didn't, I'm going to give them to you now. You can begin with an example or an anecdote. It can be a real example from something you saw in the news headlines or something you recently read about, or it can be a personal anecdote. And in a second, I'm going to show my example because I've written an introduction for my video game topic, and I use the example technique. As Esther said, you can begin with a thoughtful question. You can begin with a powerful quotation. You can begin with what I call a hypothetical scene. This is what I like to describe as kind of a what-if scenario, where the scenario might not be real. It's kind of similar to the example and anecdote. It's just here you're sort of creating the imagined scene, but it's concrete and detailed and rich enough that it almost feels like a real example. Or you can begin with an insightful or surprising fact. Now, let me say that all these are awesome techniques. They really are. But they become horrible techniques if you're just using them generically. Like, there's nothing more depressing than seeing an essay begin with a thoughtful question, or excuse me, a question, but it's not thoughtful. Right? I mean, it's just a question that's dropped in there out of the blue. The writer isn't really that interested in asking the question. The writer isn't really that interested in the reader considering the question. It's just, the writer heard at some point it's a good idea to start with a question. So papers begin with things like, what is love? And then the writer doesn't develop that idea. Right? We use the question to sort of lead into the information and develop our thoughts. We just don't drop in a question or a quotation. So yeah, all these are awesome techniques. And I'm going to linger here for a second because this might have something to do with a quiz question. Okay? These different techniques. But yeah, try them out. But try them out in earnest, for real. Not just because generically the instructor said use one of these techniques. I have no idea what Mario means there with "Baby Don't Hurt Me." It sounds like a song lyric. And here is quiz question number 4. This is like the worst session ever. I keep changing this presentation so much I forget what the quiz questions are. No, I like this quiz question. I thought I had a question that dealt with introductions and the different types of hooks. So if you took a screenshot of that page, I'm sorry. I can't remember. Maybe there's a 5th question. Anyway, I want you to identify specifically who your intended audience is. Okay? And it should not be everyone. Okay? If your audience is everyone, that's probably a sign that your topic's either too broad or you haven't thought about the topic enough. Again, think of my example, right? There's a difference between addressing my video game topic to the people who actually make the games or the people who are consumers and actually play the games. So I do want you to identify very specifically who you think your audience is going to be for your topic. move this. I don't think people who view this maybe can't see the question. Okay, so identify your intended audience. Let me go back to that discussion board and let's take a look at the example that I've already posted to the board. The great thing here is you can use this as a model to kind of get the gist of what you need to do. I thought I already had it open. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so when you go into this discussion activity, you'll see that I've already posted to the board. As you guys start posting, my post is going to keep getting bumped to the bottom. So for people who watch this session kind of later in the week, you have until Thursday at midnight to take the go-to quiz associated with this question. But if for some reason you've come to the board and it's already full of action, my model is up there. It's just probably bumped all the way down to the bottom. But what I want to do is quickly look at my introduction and my thesis, which we've already revealed actually, to see how we do this. Okay, so here's my topic, right? I'm going to read this out loud quickly. Let me see if I can make it bigger. Let me see, get the control panel out of the way. Okay, so here I wrote an introduction using the same topic of game design. Okay, remember I'm using the technique of beginning with an example. So I write, in March 2013, game development company Crystal Dynamics released Tomb Raider, a reboot of the long-standing popular video game series. There were significant changes to the game, shifting away from the block-pulling, block-pushing, puzzle-solving format that had changed little since the original Tomb Raider appeared in 1996. There were new controls and an emphasis on an open-world environment. But perhaps the biggest change came for the game's protagonist herself, Lara Croft. Gone were the short shorts and skimpy tops. Gone was Lara's unrealistic figure, small-waisted and big-chested. Instead, a new Lara appeared, one whose character design was less an adolescent boy's comic book dream and more a realistic portrayal of how a real young woman might actually look. And then comes my thesis. Though video game companies have made strides presenting strong, non-sexualized images of women, these companies need to be pressured to do more. Gamers need to write to game publishers and gaming magazines and let their voices be heard. Okay, so there's my introduction. Right? I'm sorry, I got distracted by people in the chat saying something about antibiotics. I haven't seen that discussion yet. Okay, but you can see I'm using an example, and I really did sort of brainstorm. I thought, what is the best way to capture this issue? And I thought of, yeah, this game. By the way, Tomb Raider is an awesome game. I don't know if anybody played it, but the reboot is really terrific. But I thought that was a good way to sort of introduce the topic. Like, here's this game that, you know, suddenly figured out that it could do things differently, that it could change the image of its main protagonist. Because in 2014, I think we're starting to make changes in those directions. So why not use that as an example to introduce the larger topic of encouraging more of this to happen and calling on gamers to sort of let their voices be heard so that more games like this can make similar choices. So there's my introduction. There's my thesis. You can see I've also modeled the rest of it. I explain why I'm interested in the topic, because I'm interested. And this, by the way, this is all honest. Okay, it's embarrassing, but at age 43, I still play video games. I still listen to more pop music than any adult should. I still watch lots of films and television, which is why I'm like the perfect instructor for Full Sail University, because chances are, whatever you're writing about, I'll have a decent familiarity with it and can give you advice and direction. But you can see I've explained my topic and why it interests me, that I'm interested in the social ramifications of gaming, that gaming is much more about what happens on the screen, that games, like other media, shape our impression of the world, thus it's important that it's somewhat responsible. I get into issues of audience, and I ask questions for my fellow classmates, which is you guys. Nobody ever responds to my prompt, my posting, but if you want to give me advice or feedback, you can feel free to do so. But I've sort of modeled what you need to do for this assignment, okay? Let me catch up on what some people have said in the chat. Mario, something about man-made medicines. Is that a good topic? Can someone... well, Derek kind of jumped in. Derek says it's too broad, but I've got a bigger issue about it. Can anybody guess what it is? And actually, Mario already answered that, right? Mario says it has to do. If it has to do with my industry, that's going to be a problem because I know nothing about the film industry. Well, Mario, think back what I said at the very beginning of the session. I understand that people don't know their industries well, but why not learn now? That's fine. Head out into the world. I don't know if you know fellow Full Sail instructors yet. You could reach out to them. You could use the Googler, right? You can research things that are out there. John says the internet is your friend. Yeah, the internet can also be your enemy sometimes. But to get a general sense of what's going on out there, yeah, I mean, start finding your issue. And by the way, we can talk more, like after this session is over, or you can send me messages, or you can pick my brain. I do try to hesitate to give lots of examples. I mean, I've used my example to kind of give people a sense of what they need to do. What happens if I start giving lots of film examples or music examples or computer animation examples is that people just sort of go, oh, I'll take one of those. I'm not really interested in that, but the instructor mentioned it, and I'm going to run with that. So I'd rather you sort of do the initial work, and then I'll help lead you to a place that works, rather than me throwing out examples and you just choosing something that you're not necessarily interested in. But yeah, you can find something. Okay, where was I? I think we're nearing the end of the session. Yay! I told you I should have slowed down. I wanted to keep this to under an hour. But then I fear that I rush through things too quickly, so I hope that's not the case. Yes, I still have iChat. The weird thing is, since we've switched to the new FSO platform, you guys are in month 4, most of you, so I don't know if you've been here since we made the switch from the old platform to the new one. But since we've switched to the new one, and it's got this interior messaging system, like nobody iChats with me anymore. But yeah, absolutely. In my welcome message, I give the information you need to enter into your buddy list, and I am always logged into iChat during the hours that are posted for my schedule. So if that's more comfortable for you, then yeah, absolutely, hit me up through iChat, or Monday through Friday. It's pretty simple. I'm in the office from 8:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Eastern, so you can always give me a call directly to the office as well. So absolutely, get in touch with me. Yeah, that was the end of the session. Okay. Questions? John sent me a private question. What version of OS X are you using? That's an awesome question. I don't even know. We don't have the most recent. I don't have the most recent one. I'm not on Maverick, so whatever the last one was, Mountain Lion or something like that. About this Mac. More info. Yeah, there we go. Lion. Questions, anybody? About PSAs, about topics? Esther asks, is Mac very different than PC? Yes and no. It takes you a while to get used to. I think most of you, unless you're campus students, you don't have your launch boxes yet, so you probably don't have your Mac. There are some things that take some adjustment, learning how to find things, but I won't say I'll never go back, because Full Sail is kind enough to give not just students but instructors MacBook Pros. I'm not sure I could afford one on my own, but if I had my choice, I don't think I'd ever go back. It's just it's faster, it's elegant, it's sleeker, it's so much easier to find things. It's got all these cool things, these gestures you can do on the touchpad. I think you can still see my screen up here. So, like, for the longest time when I switched to Mac, I was still going to the right here and like clicking on the cursor to move up and down the page. But you don't need to do that with Mac. You just swipe your fingers, 2 fingers, up and down the touchpad, and you can just fly up and down the screen like I'm doing now. Word count. Do we have a word count for the discussion? I can't remember. There might be. Let's see. 250 word minimum, but you know what? You'll go over that. 100 word minimum for each of your responses to fellow classmates. But your introduction by itself will chew up most of those 250 words, so you won't have any problem meeting that word requirement. Someone asked me why I didn't update. I don't know. I just there are certain software programs that actually aren't great with the Mavericks update, so a lot of us are holding back updating. Yeah, okay. Matthew sent me a private message. Matthew, we're just going to have to talk more offline. We'll have to do iChat, or you'll have to send me messages where you explain to me your program, because Yeah, that program I don't know as much about, but we can figure out something together. Uh, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. It doesn't mean that we can't chat or people can't ask questions, but I feel bad for the people who are going to watch this after the fact. So I'm going to stop the recording now.